Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something real today. When a man wants you badly, but he's fighting his feelings, you're not dealing with confusion. You're dealing with fear. A man does not battle what he doesn't care about. He doesn't wrestle emotions for a woman he feels nothing for. If he's fighting, it's because something in him already knows you matter. A man fights his feelings most when he feels emotionally exposed, because emotional exposure is the one place men are rarely taught how to stand confidently. From the time a man grows up, he learns that strength means control, and control means not letting anyone see what can hurt you. So when a woman enters his life and suddenly has the power to affect his mood, his focus, his peace, that's when fear quietly steps in. He may not even recognize it as fear at first. He tells himself he's just being careful, just taking his time, just not ready. But underneath all of that is one simple truth. He feels something real, and real feelings make him vulnerable. When a man feels emotionally exposed, he becomes hyper-aware of what he could lose. His independence, his pride, his sense of authority over his own heart. Loving someone means giving them access, and access means risk. That's why he may pull back right after moments of closeness. You'll notice it happens after deep conversations, laughter that lasts too long, or moments where he lets his guard down without realizing it. Once he feels that emotional openness, his instinct kicks in and says, "Hold on, you're giving too much." So he retreats, not because he doesn't want you, but because he wants to regain control of himself. This internal conflict creates confusing behavior. He may crave your presence but limit his time with you. He may open up emotionally one day and act distant the next. That back and forth isn't manipulation, it's self-protection. He's trying to figure out how to want you without losing himself. Men don't like feeling emotionally naked, especially if they're not sure the ground beneath them is safe. If he doesn't know where he stands with you, or worse, if he realizes how much you matter, his instinct is to armor up. What makes this even stronger is that emotional exposure challenges a man's ego. When he realizes you can affect his happiness, he also realizes you could affect his pain. That's a dangerous realization for someone who's spent his life believing he should always be in control. So instead of admitting his feelings, he suppresses them. He distracts himself. He rationalizes them away. But feelings don't disappear just because they're ignored. They show up in small, uncontrollable ways, checking his phone to see if you texted, thinking about you when he's alone, reacting emotionally when you pull back. The truth is, a man only fights feelings when they are powerful enough to change him. Indifference doesn't require resistance. Desire doesn't need defense. Emotional exposure is proof that you've reached a place in him that most people never touch. And while it may look like distance on the surface, underneath it is a man trying to come to terms with the fact that his heart has already stepped forward. Even if his words haven't caught up yet, when a man sends mixed signals, most people assume confusion, immaturity, or games, but in many cases, mixed signals are simply the visible signs of suppressed desire. A man who feels nothing does not struggle. He does not hesitate. He does not contradict himself. When feelings are absent, behavior is clean and simple. It's only when a man wants you more than he planned that his actions begin to clash with his words. Inside his mind, two forces are pulling in opposite directions. One part of him wants closeness, connection, and emotional intimacy. The other part is trying to protect his comfort zone. So what comes out is inconsistency. He reaches out, then pulls back. He initiates, then delays. He shows interest, then suddenly acts distant. This isn't because he enjoys causing confusion. It's because he's negotiating with himself in real time. Every interaction with you forces him to confront feelings he's trying to keep contained. You'll notice that his mixed signals still orbit around you. He may say he's busy, yet he finds time to respond. He may claim he's not ready, yet he acts emotionally invested. He may avoid defining the relationship, yet he reacts when he feels you slipping away. That's because desire doesn't shut off just because logic tells it to. Suppressed desire leaks through behavior. It shows up in his tone, his time, and his attention. Even when he's pulling back, he's still emotionally engaged. Another clear sign of suppressed desire is hesitation in decision-making. He wants to commit to moments, plans, or conversations, but he pauses, he overthinks, he delays. This happens because committing, even in small ways, feels like a step closer to emotional surrender. So instead of moving forward confidently, he moves cautiously. He's trying to experience you without admitting how deeply he's affected by you. What's important to understand is that mixed signals are rarely intentional manipulation when desire is being suppressed. They're the byproduct of emotional tension. His heart is speaking one language, his fear is speaking another, and his behavior becomes the translator that doesn't quite get it right. That's why you might feel warmth one moment and distance the next, clarity followed by confusion. You're watching an internal argument play out externally. Men are taught to act only when they're certain, but feelings don't wait for certainty. When desire grows faster than readiness, resistance follows. He tells himself to slow down, to not get carried away, to stay detached, but emotions don't respond to commands. The harder he fights them, the more visible the struggle becomes. And that struggle often looks like mixed signals. So if his behavior feels contradictory but consistently returns to you, that's not a lack of interest. That's interest being restrained. Suppressed desire doesn't disappear, it creates friction. And friction over time always reveals where true feeling exists, even when words never quite say it out loud. When a man wants you badly but is fighting his feelings, his sense of protection often turns on before he ever admits emotional attachment. Protection is instinctive for men, and it doesn't require labels or commitments to activate. Even when he tells himself he's not serious, not ready, or not emotionally involved, his behavior begins to say otherwise. He becomes aware of your emotional and physical well-being in ways that go beyond casual interest. He checks in when you're quiet. He notices changes in your mood. He feels unsettled when something threatens your peace. That reaction comes from attachment, not obligation. What makes this protection meaningful is that it happens without ownership. He doesn't publicly claim you. He doesn't declare feelings, yet he steps into moments where he feels responsible for how you're treated or how you feel. This contradiction confuses many women because it looks like care without commitment. But from his perspective, it's the safest way to express what he feels without fully exposing his heart. Protection allows him to act on his feelings while still telling himself he's in control. Jealousy often follows closely behind this protective instinct. Not the dramatic, possessive kind, but subtle shifts in behavior that reveal emotional investment. His tone changes when another man is mentioned. His attention sharpens when he senses competition. He may ask questions he pretends are casual, but carry emotional weight. Jealousy is not about control, it's about perceived loss. A man only feels jealous when he sees someone else having access to something he values. Even if he hasn't claimed you, part of him already sees you as emotionally significant. Consistency is another signal that quietly exposes his feelings. He may fight the urge to commit, but he shows up in predictable ways. He checks on you regularly. He responds even when he doesn't have to. He maintains connection even during periods when he's trying to create distance. That consistency isn't accidental, it's emotional gravity. He can pull away temporarily, but he can't stay gone because his feelings keep drawing him back. What's important to understand is that protection, jealousy, and consistency all exist before verbal confession. These behaviors come from the emotional brain, not the logical one. He doesn't sit down and decide to care this deeply. It happens automatically. And once it starts, fighting it becomes exhausting. That's why you may sense tension in him, moments where he seems conflicted or restless. He's trying to suppress instincts that are designed to surface when attachment forms. A man who feels nothing can walk away easily. He doesn't protect. He doesn't feel threatened by competition. He doesn't show up consistently. Those behaviors require emotional energy. When you see them in someone who refuses to label his feelings, you're not imagining things. You're witnessing a man whose heart has already chosen, even if his mouth hasn't caught up yet. When a man wants you badly, but is fighting his feelings, his actions become the most honest confession he makes. Words are easy for men to control, but behavior is much harder to disguise. He may tell you he's unsure, not ready, or not looking for anything serious, yet his actions consistently contradict those statements. This contradiction is not accidental. It happens because feelings operate faster than logic. His heart moves before his pride can stop it, and his actions reveal that movement long before he's willing to speak it. You'll notice he makes effort even when he claims he shouldn't. He shows up when it's inconvenient. He listens when he could easily disengage. He invests time, attention, and energy without being asked. These are costly behaviors for men. Men don't give sustained effort to something they don't value. Even when he tries to keep emotional distance, his actions betray him by staying connected to you. Effort is not driven by obligation, it's driven by desire. Another clear sign is how he reacts when you pull back. A man who truly doesn't care remains unaffected, but a man fighting feelings becomes unsettled. His tone changes. He checks in more often. He seeks reassurance indirectly. That reaction reveals emotional dependence forming beneath the surface. He may not call it that, but his nervous system feels the shift immediately. Distance from you creates discomfort, and discomfort forces him to act. His body language also tells the truth his words hide. He leans in when you speak. He mirrors your movements. He holds eye contact longer than necessary. These are subconscious signals of engagement and attraction. Even when he verbally downplays his feelings, his physical presence says otherwise. The body doesn't lie because it doesn't negotiate with fear. It responds to connection instinctively. You'll also notice that he prioritizes you in subtle ways. He remembers details. He adjusts his schedule. He includes you in his thoughts, even when he claims to be focused elsewhere. Prioritization is one of the clearest indicators of emotional attachment. Men organize their lives around what matters most to them, even when they don't consciously admit it. What makes this stage powerful is that his actions create an emotional bridge before his words do. He builds connection through behavior while still resisting verbal commitment. This creates tension both for him and for you because the relationship feels real even without a label. He's living out feelings he hasn't accepted yet. A man can lie with words, delay with excuses, and rationalize with logic, but he cannot consistently fake emotional behavior. Actions require emotional fuel. If he didn't want you deeply, he wouldn't keep showing up, adjusting, reacting, and investing. His actions are already telling the story. He's too afraid to say out loud. When a man wants you badly but is fighting his feelings, one of the strongest forces behind that resistance is his fear of losing control. For many men, emotional control is tied directly to identity. Control means stability, strength, and self-respect. So when a woman enters his life and begins to influence his thoughts, his mood, and his decisions, it triggers internal alarm bells. He doesn't just feel attraction, he feels disruption. And disruption feels dangerous to someone who has learned to measure worth by self-mastery. This fear shows up in the way he tries to manage the pace of the connection. He may slow things down just as they start to deepen. He might avoid conversations that feel too emotional or deflect when feelings are mentioned. That doesn't mean he doesn't feel them. It means he feels them too strongly. Emotional momentum threatens his sense of control, so he applies brakes. He tells himself he needs space, clarity, or time, when what he really needs is reassurance that he won't lose himself. You'll notice he intellectualizes his emotions. Instead of saying how he feels, he analyzes the situation. He talks about timing, logic, practicality, or circumstances. This is a control strategy. Feelings are unpredictable, but logic feels safe. By turning emotion into analysis, he believes he can contain it. But emotions don't disappear when they're analyzed, they just get delayed. And during that delay, tension builds. Another sign of this fear is emotional self-sabotage. Just when things feel close, he may create distance or conflict. Not because he wants to end things, but because closeness feels like surrender. Pulling away gives him the illusion of control. It helps him feel grounded again, even though it costs him emotional peace. That's why he may seem restless or conflicted. He's choosing control over connection, even when connection is what he truly wants. You may also notice that he struggles to be fully present when things feel too good. Joy can be as threatening as pain when someone fears loss of control. If happiness depends on another person, it feels risky. So instead of leaning in, he hesitates. He guards himself. He holds back words, gestures, or commitments that would make the bond undeniable. What's important to understand is that this fear doesn't come from lack of desire. It comes from depth of feeling. A man doesn't fear losing control over something that doesn't matter. He fears it when the stakes feel high. The more he wants you, the more he senses the power you hold, and the harder he tries to protect himself from that vulnerability. In this struggle, his heart is already ahead of his mind. He's trying to catch up, trying to regain balance, trying to feel safe enough to let go. And until that happens, the fight continues, not against you, but against the part of himself that already knows how much you mean to him. When a man wants you badly, but is fighting his feelings, emotional tension becomes the loudest signal he can't silence. Long before he ever admits anything out loud, his internal conflict begins to show in the space between words, in the pauses, in the way conversations feel charged, even when nothing romantic is said. That tension exists because desire is pushing forward while fear is pulling back at the same time. He's not calm because calm means acceptance, and acceptance means vulnerability. So instead, his energy feels restless, alert, and emotionally heavy whenever you're around. You may notice that moments with him feel intense without being dramatic. Simple conversations linger. Eye contact lasts longer than necessary. Silence feels full instead of empty. This happens because he's constantly monitoring himself, what he says, how much he reveals, how close he gets. That self-monitoring creates pressure. He wants to lean in, but he's holding himself back, and that restraint builds emotional electricity. You feel it because it's real. Emotional tension is the body responding to truth before the mind allows it. This tension also shows up in conversations that almost cross a line, but stop just short. He may start to open up emotionally, then suddenly change the subject. He may joke to deflect a serious moment or use humor to hide nervousness. These shifts aren't random, they're defense mechanisms. When a man senses that a conversation could expose his feelings, his instinct is to redirect, not because he's uninterested, but because exposure feels risky. He's trying to stay safe while standing close to what he wants. Another place emotional tension appears is in his reaction to your emotional availability. If you become distant, he feels it immediately. His energy changes. He reaches out, asks questions, or becomes more attentive. But if you become too emotionally open, he may retreat again. This push and pull isn't about manipulation.